The Grand Council of the Interplanetary Alliance was always a marvel to behold. A sprawling chamber with seats for hundreds of species, each section customized for different physiologies. Today marked the 7th cycle since humans had joined our ranks, and I still found myself fascinated by their delegation. I am Ziktox, xenological recorder for the Grand Council. My appendages hover over my datapad as I prepare to document today's proceedings. My role requires objectivity and careful assessment of potential threats or benefits from each species. Humans have been particularly perplexing. Another emergency session about the humans? Vorax clicks his mandibles beside me, his skin flickering pale blue with amused skepticism. Not about them, I correct, my own skin rippling purple with mild concern. But they're certainly involved. We, xenological recorders, occupy a dedicated observation deck, allowing us an unobstructed view of the proceedings, while remaining separate enough to maintain objectivity. The humans had 3 official representatives present today. Ambassador Dana Powell, a female with diplomatic credentials and a perpetually calm demeanor. Commander Jack Foster, their military liaison, who always positioned himself slightly behind Powell, observing rather than speaking, and their cultural advisor, Dr. Liu, known informally as Mayu among council members. Peculiar species, Vorax continues, watching the human trio settle into their designated area. Born on a planet with corrosive water covering most of its surface, extreme temperature variations, and yet they spend their entertainment hours imagining scenarios where they destroy themselves. Apocalypse fiction, I acknowledge. A cultural quirk we've documented extensively. The chamber quiets as High Counselor Dreza of the Paxian Collective rises to the central platform. Paxians, with their translucent skin and floating appendages, always commanded attention through gentle authority rather than intimidation. This emergency session has been called to address the deployment of extraction units by the Haxan Empire in Sector 7, Dreza announces, her voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber's acoustic design. This sector contains the pre-ascension civilization of Nikari, currently under Earth's protection as per Treaty 5924. My attention shifts to the Haxan delegation, specifically to their representative Grow, whose exoskeleton plates click with barely contained irritation. The Haxan were an ancient empire, powerful and territorial, with a cultural emphasis on strength above all else. Sector 7 contains a single pre-ascension planet of no strategic value, Grow states dismissively, towering over most other delegates. Our extraction operations are a practical necessity for resources vital to the Empire. The humans' protection claim is excessive. Ambassador Powell rises, her movements measured and graceful by human standards. The Council approved Earth's protection of the Nikari 5 cycles ago. Our request is simple. Allow extraction with environmental safeguards and no contact with the Nikari population. I note that Commander Foster's heart rate has increased slightly. My species possesses limited empathic abilities, nothing invasive, just surface-level physiological awareness. The commander remains outwardly calm, but something beneath that polished exterior has shifted. Grow's exoskeleton clicks more rapidly, a sign of dismissal in Haxan body language. Earth is a fledgling species barely 7 cycles into council membership. You lack the standing to dictate terms to the Haxan Empire. The council chamber falls silent. Even High Counselor Dreza seems momentarily at a loss for response. The diplomatic slight is unmistakable. Grow has essentially declared that humans are too insignificant to negotiate with as equals. Fascinating, Vorax whispers beside me. Do you think this is the apocalypse scenario the humans have been preparing for? Let's wait and see, I reply, my skin darkening to orange with intense concentration. What happens next will forever change how the Council views humanity. Commander Foster steps forward, no longer remaining in Ambassador Powell's shadow. His posture shifts subtly, shoulders squaring, stance widening just slightly. Representative Grow, he begins, his voice initially maintaining the diplomatic tone we've come to expect from humans. Treaty 5124 explicitly prohibits industrial operations within 3 light-years of pre-ascension civilizations without supervision from their designated protectors. Gro's posture becomes more rigid, clearly not expecting the military officer to address him directly. Earth respects the Haxan Empire's long history, Foster continues, his tone gradually shifting. But you need to remove your extraction units from Nakari Prime's orbit immediately. Or what? Human, Gro challenges, exoskeleton plates rattling in what I recognize as Haxan laughter. Foster's expression changes, subtle to most species, but to my trained eye, unmistakable. My datapad automatically notes, human facial markers indicate transition from diplomatic engagement to confrontational posture. Or you're about to fuck around and find out, Foster replies, his voice now entirely stripped of diplomatic overtones. The translation crystals throughout the chamber struggle momentarily with the human idiom, but the meaning comes through clearly enough. Several delegates gasp. Ambassador Powell doesn't intervene, which I find most telling of all. My communication panel lights up with an urgent signal from our observation network. Zik, you need to see this, comes the voice of my surveillance coordinator. I access the feed and project it to my private screen. The data shows over 50 Earth vessels suddenly appearing from stealth positions, surrounding the Haxan extraction fleet near Sector 7. They had been there all along, invisible to standard detection. Council delegates, I interrupt. Following protocol for emergency information, I've just received confirmation that Earth has deployed a substantial military presence around the Haxan extraction fleet in Sector 7. The chamber's main display activates, showing the human vessels arranged in perfect formation, weapon systems primed and aimed at the Haxan ships. Gro's exoskeleton plates click rapidly in alarm. This is an act of aggression! The humans threaten war! Commander Foster remains unmoved. No. This is a response to your violation of Treaty 5924. Your extraction units entered protected space despite clear notification of its status. We're simply enforcing the treaty that all council members, including the Haxan Empire, have signed. High Counselor Driza raises her appendages for order. Commander Foster, while the treaty does permit protective action, the deployment of a hidden fleet suggests premeditation. Not hidden, Foster corrects. Prudently positioned, the Haxan Empire has violated 3 separate territorial agreements in the past 2 cycles. We anticipated they might do the same here. Ambassador Powell finally rises again. High Counselor, Earth has no interest in military confrontation. We simply wish to ensure the Nakari remain undisturbed during their pre-ascension phase. The fleet will withdraw once the extraction units leave the protected zone. Gro confers hurriedly with his delegation before turning back to the Council. The Haxan Empire will temporarily suspend extraction operations while this misunderstanding is reviewed by our Imperial hegemon. The tension in the chamber doesn't dissipate even as the session formally concludes. As Vorax and I compile our observations, I can't help but note that this was merely the opening move in what promised to be a complex game. They had a fleet ready, Vorax muses. 50 ships, perfectly positioned, completely undetected, until they chose to reveal themselves. And Commander Foster's behavior shift was most illuminating. I add, the humans call it turning off polite mode. It appears to be a cultural mechanism, a conscious choice between diplomatic engagement and direct confrontation. Dangerous, Vorax concludes. Perhaps, I reply, my skin shifting to a thoughtful green. Or perhaps what we've just witnessed is humanity's true nature, a species that prefers peace but is perpetually prepared for war. I made a note in my official record. Further observation required. Initial assessment may need revision. The Council mandated that Gro report to his superiors for review, requiring the Haxan Empire to justify their actions in Sector 7. Ambassador Powell assured the Council that Earth would maintain minimal presence until the situation resolved. What none of us realized was that this was merely the first test, a probe to assess human response. The real confrontation was yet to come. 2 days later, the Council reconvened for what would become the second phase of this interspecies chess match. Despite being ordered to withdraw their extraction operations, Grow had instead established a defensive perimeter around what he claimed was a mineral deposit essential to Imperial defense. This time, the Haxan delegation arrived with additional warriors and heavier ceremonial armor, a clear statement of intent. High Counselor Dreza opened the session with uncharacteristic directness. Representative Grow, the Council has received reports that Haxan extraction units remain in Sector 7 despite your agreement to withdraw pending Imperial review. Grow's posture was defiant. The mineral deposits discovered are of strategic importance to the Haxan Empire. We have merely secured them while discussions continue. Before Ambassador Powell could respond, Dr. Lowe, the human cultural advisor, stepped forward. This was unusual. Miyu rarely spoke in formal sessions, typically advising from the background. With the Council's permission, Dr. Liu began. I would like to present evidence regarding the Haxan Empire's true activities in Sector 7. High Counselor Dreza gestured permission, and Dr. Liu activated a projection showing chemical analysis of the mining operation. These are not standard mineral extractions, Dr. Liu explained, highlighting specific compounds. The material being harvested contains isotopes used exclusively in displacement weapons technology, prohibited under Treaty 8942. The Council chamber erupted in murmurs. Displacement weapons had been banned after they proved capable of tearing holes in space-time, causing catastrophic and unpredictable damage across vast distances. Dr. Lau continued, displaying intercepted communications between the extraction fleet and what appeared to be a Haxan weapons division. The evidence was damning. Grow's exoskeleton plates clicked furiously. These are fabrications. Earth seeks to undermine the Haxan Empire's standing. An unexpected voice cut through the chaos. Another Haxan, but not from Grow's delegation. The evidence is accurate, High Counselor. The chamber fell silent as Xantur, a Haxan scientist, approached the central platform. I serve the Imperial Science Division. Representative Grow's faction is acting against the Hegemon's orders. Displacement weapon research was discontinued 50 cycles ago by royal decree. This revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Internal dissent within the Haxan Empire was unprecedented in Council history. Traitor! Grow hissed, his warriors shifting menacingly. Commander Foster stepped forward, positioning himself protectively near Xantur. Earth has no intention of exploiting internal Haxan politics. Our sole concern remains the protection of the Nakari civilization and enforcement of Council treaties. High Counselor Dreza raised all 4 appendages, demanding order. Representative Grow, these allegations are severe. The Council must temporarily relieve you of your position pending investigation. Grow's rage was palpable. But with his own countrymen testifying against him and the human fleet still positioned around his extraction units, he had little choice but to comply. The session concluded with the Haxan delegation fractured, some supporting Grow's aggressive stance, others aligning with Xantur's revelation of their violation of Imperial doctrine. As the chamber cleared, Ambassador Powell approached Dr. Lau and Commander Foster. Their conversation was too distant for me to hear, but their body language suggested triumph tempered with caution. They had won this round decisively, but the game was far from over. Back at our observation post, Vorax and I compiled our updated assessment. The humans demonstrated remarkable information warfare capabilities. I noted. They knew about the displacement weapon research before the session began, and they leveraged internal Haxan politics perfectly, Vorax added. The question is, did they orchestrate Xantur's appearance, or merely capitalize on it? Either way, I concluded, We're witnessing the emergence of what's being called the Powell Doctrine, using information and position strength to force diplomatic resolution without direct conflict. The Council granted Earth's request to establish a small outpost near Nakari Prime, a visible presence to deter further Haxan incursions while the investigation proceeded. Ambassador Powell assured the Council that human personnel would maintain minimal interaction with the Nakari population, adhering to non-interference protocols. What we didn't anticipate was how the Nakari would react to humanity's arrival. The Nakari were a pre-industrial civilization with rich religious traditions, including prophecies about sky guardians who would someday descend to protect them. The mere visibility of human structures on their lunar satellite triggered widespread religious fervor. They began to view humans as divine protectors, exactly the kind of cultural contamination the non-interference doctrine was designed to prevent. When the Council reconvened for the third session, this new complication dominated the agenda. Ambassador Powell, High Counselor Driza began. While Earth's protective role is acknowledged, your visible presence violates the core principle of non-interference. The Nakari have already begun developing religious practices centered around your outpost. Powell nodded respectfully. We understand the Council's concerns, High Counselor. However, Treaty 5124 specifically permits a defensive presence when a protected civilization faces external threat. We have shared no technology and made no direct contact. Your mere visibility is contact enough, came a voice from the Haxan section. Grow had been temporarily replaced by a senior Imperial official, but his faction maintained representation. The Haxan Empire will not stand idle while a primitive civilization is contaminated by human presence. The official continued. We demand the immediate withdrawal of Earth forces from Nakari space. Commander Foster's expression darkened, but Ambassador Powell placed a restraining hand on his arm. Earth reminds the Council that the current situation arose solely because of Haxan Treaty violations. Powell responded evenly. We have documented evidence that Haxan extraction activities were leaking radioactive byproducts into Nakari Prime's atmosphere, contamination that would have caused mass extinction within 3 generations. This was new information, and the Council chamber fell silent as Powell displayed atmospheric analysis showing the truth of her claim. The Haxan delegation shifted uncomfortably. Earth proposes a compromise, Powell continued. We will reduce our visible presence and relocate our defensive outpost to the far side of Nakari's moon, minimizing cultural impact while maintaining protective capability. High Counselor Driza appeared to consider this. The Council will require verification protocols and regular reports on cultural impact assessment. Agreed, Powell responded immediately. The Haxan representative rose again. The Empire issues a final warning. Withdraw entirely from Nakari space within 1 planetary rotation, or face military response. The threat hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. This was no longer about extraction rights or treaty violations. It was a direct challenge to Earth's growing influence in the Council. High Counselor Driza attempted to defuse the situation. Such threats have no place in Council proceedings. The Haxan Empire is currently under investigation for treaty violations. Further aggressive actions would compound these charges. The Haxan representative remained unmoved. The Empire recognizes the Council's authority in matters of common interest. The defense of our territorial spheres of influence remains our sovereign right. As the session concluded without resolution, I noted that Commander Foster spent several minutes in intense communication through his neural interface. Whatever was happening, Earth was preparing its response. The Powell Doctrine is about to be tested, Vorax observed. Information and position strength worked against a rogue faction. Will it work against the full might of the Haxan Empire? We're about to find out, I replied, my skin darkening to nearly black with apprehension. That night, our monitoring systems detected massive energy signatures from Nakari's moon. The Haxan had deployed displacement weapon prototypes, the very technology they had denied developing. Their target was clearly the human outpost. What happened next occurred with such precision that even now, as I compile this record, I struggle to capture its full impact. The invisible fleet that Earth had positioned around Sector 7 was revealed to be merely an advance guard. A much larger force emerged from hyperspace, vessels bearing markings of Earth's formal military rather than their protective services. These ships moved with perfect coordination, establishing a defensive perimeter around Nakari Prime that effectively neutralized the Haxan weapon platforms without destroying them. Simultaneously, Xantur appeared at the Council's emergency chamber with additional evidence that Gro's faction had deliberately harvested unstable radioactive materials that would have rendered Nakari uninhabitable, not as a byproduct, but as an intended outcome. The Council chamber descended into chaos as species took to sides. Some supported the Haxan Empire's right to assert dominance, while others rallied behind Earth's protective stance. Through it all, Ambassador Powell remained silent, allowing the evidence to speak for itself. Then, Commander Foster did something unprecedented. He bypassed diplomatic channels entirely and opened a direct communication to the Haxan Military Command, displayed for all Council members to witness. "This is Commander Foster of Earth Defense Force," he stated, his voice entirely devoid of diplomatic courtesy. "You have deployed prohibited weapons technology against a protected civilization and an authorized Council peacekeeping force. You have exactly 30 seconds to power down all weapon systems and begin withdrawal." The Haxan commander, visible in the transmission, bristled. "The Haxan Empire does not respond to ultimatums from lesser species." Foster's expression remained unchanged. "You've reached the final limit of our patience. Turn your polite mode back on, or face the full consequences of humanity's displeasure." The chamber fell silent, every delegate transfixed by this direct military confrontation happening in real time. Ambassador Powell made no move to intervene. Dr. Liu simply observed, taking notes. 20 seconds, Foster continued. "Be advised that our response will not be limited to defensive measures if you force this confrontation." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the Haxan commander's features. Their intelligence had clearly underestimated both human firepower density and resolve. 10 seconds. The Haxan weapons platforms began powering down. The commander issued hasty orders to his subordinates. "Withdrawal protocols initiated," the Haxan commander finally stated, his tone notably less confident. "Under protest." Foster's response was clipped. "Protest noted. Complete withdrawal from Sector 7 expected within 12 hours. Earth Defense Force will verify compliance." The transmission ended, and the Council chamber remained silent for several heartbeats. We had just witnessed humanity's polite mode turn off completely, transforming from diplomatic engagement to military force in the space of minutes. High Counselor Dreza finally broke the silence. "The Council acknowledges Earth's defensive action in protection of the Nakari civilization. However, the scale of military force deployed raises serious questions about Earth's previously declared capabilities." Ambassador Powell rose calmly. "High Counselor, Earth has never misrepresented its defensive capabilities. We simply choose diplomatic solutions whenever possible. When those fail, we respond appropriately to the threat level presented." "And the size of your military?" another delegate inquired. "Sufficient," Powell replied simply. In the aftermath, the Haxan Empire suffered multiple setbacks. Gro was formally removed from his position and recalled to face imperial justice. Their extraction operations were not only halted, but placed under Council monitoring for a full cycle. Most significantly, their reputation for military dominance had been severely undermined by their retreat in the face of human forces. Earth, meanwhile, solidified its position. The Council had little choice but to formally adopt what became known as the Powell Doctrine as an official interpretation of Treaty 5924. Protector species had the right to establish defensive forces and even limited physical presence if necessary to safeguard pre-ascension civilizations. As I finalized my xenological assessment in the following days, Vorax joined me at my workstation. "You're recommending reclassification," he noted, observing my report. "Yes," I confirmed. "Humans should be moved from Category 4, potential threat, to Category 5, potential guardian. Because they demonstrated military restraint." My skin rippled with thoughtful blue patterns. Because they demonstrated a conscious choice. Most species are either inherently aggressive or inherently pacific. Humans choose peace while maintaining the capacity for overwhelming force. That's a rare combination. "And a terrifying one," Vorax added. "Perhaps," I acknowledged. But I find myself thinking of something Commander Foster said in a previous briefing. Politeness is a choice, not a weakness. I believe we've only just begun to understand what that truly means. The Nakari continue their development, largely unaware of the interstellar drama that unfolded to protect them. The human outpost remains, though now positioned to minimize cultural contamination. The Haxan Empire has withdrawn from Sector 7 entirely, focusing instead on internal political struggles, as Gro's faction faces accusations of treason against the imperial hegemon. And throughout the Council, species look at humanity with new understanding. The polite, diplomatic species that joined us 7 cycles ago has revealed itself to be something far more complex. A civilization that consciously chooses peace while maintaining the capacity for devastating war. As Ambassador Powell put it in her final address to the Council, Earth extends friendship to all species who respect the rights of others. We prefer diplomatic solutions and mutual benefit. But make no mistake, our polite mode is a choice we make every day. We hope never to turn it off again in this chamber. My final notation in the xenological record reads, "Humanity remains the most perplexing species encountered to date. Their cultural preference for peace exists alongside an unparalleled readiness for conflict. This duality makes them potentially the most valuable allies, or the most dangerous adversaries, in Council space. Continued observation strongly recommended." Vorax reviewed my assessment and added his own. "Agree with reclassification to Category 5. Note for future xenologists. When humans say, 'Fuck around and find out,' believe them." Commander Foster later explained to a junior xenological recorder that the phrase originated as a warning, a final courtesy before diplomacy ends and consequences begin. Like so much about humanity, it was both a threat and an offering of choice. The day the Council witnessed humanity's polite mode turn off in real time became a watershed moment in interstellar relations. Species throughout Council space began reassessing their understanding of Earth and its capabilities. Some responded with fear, others with respect, but none could deny the new reality. Humans were not merely another voice in the Grand Council. They were potentially its most formidable guardians. Ambassador Powell and Commander Foster returned to Earth shortly after the crisis concluded. In their private assessment to Earth's leadership, they noted that the demonstration had achieved its purpose, establishing humanity's position as a species to be respected, not merely tolerated. Dr. Lowe remained at the Council, continuing cultural exchange programs and building relationships with other species. In private conversations, Mayu often emphasized that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its military capacity, but its adaptability, the ability to shift strategies the moment established rules became disadvantageous. Gro faced the consequences of his actions, stripped of rank and standing. Xantur warned him during the tribunal, "Continue down this extremist path, and your name will be erased from imperial history." As for me, I continue my work as xenological recorder, documenting the ongoing evolution of interspecies relations. But I find myself paying particular attention to humanity's representatives, watching for those subtle shifts that indicate when their polite mode might waver, and what new revelations such moments might bring. The Grand Council has adapted to the new understanding of humanity. Rules have been modified, expectations adjusted. We now recognize that behind every diplomatic smile from an Earth representative lies the implicit knowledge that politeness is indeed a choice, one that can be revoked when principles are threatened. Perhaps most telling was the reaction of the Nakari themselves. Though efforts were made to minimize cultural contamination, they had glimpsed enough of the confrontation to incorporate it into their mythology. In their evolving religion, the Sky Guardians were now depicted as beings of great kindness, who could transform into warriors of terrible power when their protected ones were threatened. In their primitive understanding, they had captured the essential truth about humanity that the Council was only beginning to grasp. Peace through strength is only meaningful when both peace and strength are genuine. As I complete this record, news has reached the Council that 3 other pre-ascension civilizations have formally requested Earth's protection. The implications are still unfolding, but one thing is certain: the day humanity's polite mode turned off changed the balance of power in Council space forever. And despite my professional obligation to remain objective, I cannot help but feel that this change may ultimately be for the better. A species that values peace enough to choose it daily, yet stands ready to defend it fiercely, is exactly the kind of guardian the Council has long needed. My skin flickers with cautious optimism as I file this final assessment. Continued alliance with humanity recommended, with appropriate respect for their boundaries. When politeness is a choice rather than a necessity, its absence becomes a warning we would all do well to heed.